You think the worst robbery is someone draining your bank account? Think again. The most ruthless theft comes from your own flesh and blood. They stole my intellect and future, expecting me to smile as a stepping stone for our family star. But they forgot one basic rule. The architect who designs the foundation knows exactly which weak point brings the entire building down. Listen closely, because this is how my silence became their most expensive lesson. Hello, wonderful listeners of Maya Revenge Stories. Unfortunately, YouTube recently demonetized our channel, leaving us without the necessary budget to keep operating. If you find today's story engaging, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can provide a budget for our hardworking staff to cover their living expenses and continue creating these stories for you. You can support us by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the donation link in the description or comment section below. I am 23 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have lived in the shadow of a sun that burns everything it touches. My name is Blakely Austin. I am a senior majoring in ecological architecture at a public state university. My days and nights are consumed by concrete. Specifically, researching self-healing building materials that can seal their own fractures and withstand the harsh test of time. It is meticulous, unglamorous work. It requires immense patience. Fortunately, patience is a survival skill I have had to master while growing up in our suburban Seattle home. In the Austin household, success has a very specific face, and it belongs exclusively to my older sister, Harper. At 28 years old, Harper is a fiercely ambitious project manager at Vanguard Horizon Developments. She is the undeniable center of gravity in our family. Whenever my parents, Arthur and Eleanor, speak of achievement, they are simply describing Harper. She sparkles. She commands the room at every dinner party, her laughter ringing out like crystal as she confidently declares herself the pioneer of our family, the one paving the golden way for the rest of us. My parents hang on to her every word as if she were delivering profound sermons from a mountaintop. While Harper basks in the warm glow of the chandelier upstairs, I exist in the damp, quiet solitude of our basement. I transformed that underground space into a makeshift architectural studio. The air down there always smells faintly of drafting paper, graphite, and cold earth. My walls are plastered from floor to ceiling with structural schematics, load-bearing calculations, and complex biomimicry concepts. But to Arthur and Eleanor, my sanctuary is nothing more than a childish hideaway. Whenever they bother to glance at my groundbreaking ecological designs, they merely smirk. They call my intricate scale models Play-Doh games and constantly remind me that my chosen path offers no real money and absolutely no future. To them, I am just a confused student playing with dirt, while Harper is out there building the actual city skyline. I learned early on to keep my head down and my mouth firmly shut. I let them have their grand delusions while I quietly built my reality. My current obsession is a massive eco-complex design, a revolutionary project integrating my self-healing materials into a high-density urban structure. It is beautiful. It is entirely self-sustaining, and I know it has the potential to change the industry. But Harper knew it too, or at least, she sensed the immense value radiating from my corner of the dark. Despite her incredibly busy, glamorous life upstairs, my sister developed a sudden, peculiar habit. She started visiting my basement. She would descend the creaky wooden stairs holding 2 steaming mugs of gourmet coffee, wearing her sharp designer suits, offering a bright, perfectly synthetic smile. "I just thought my favorite little sister could use a caffeine boost," she would say, placing a mug dangerously close to my laptop. At first glance, it seemed like a rare, touching olive branch, but I am highly observant. I noticed how her eyes never actually met mine. Instead, they aggressively darted across my drafting table. She would linger far too long, leaning heavily over my shoulder, the strong scent of her expensive floral perfume violently clashing with the honest smell of my eraser shavings. She would trail her perfectly manicured fingers over my raw blueprints, closely studying the intricate web of my structural supports. "What is this section right here?" she would ask. her voice dripping with casual, practiced curiosity. "It looks so incredibly complicated for a simple apartment building. Why are these specific lines intersecting like that?" They were seemingly innocent questions, the exact kind a supportive older sister might ask to politely show interest in her siblings' tedious college homework. But Harper was never genuinely interested in me. She was a predator methodically assessing a meal. I would give her vague, overly simplified answers, not wanting to bore her with the complex mathematics of load distribution and ecological sustainability. I honestly assumed she would not understand it anyway. She was a project manager, a fast talker, a delegator, not a structural designer. She knew exactly how to sell a building to investors, not how to engineer one safely from the ground up. I would quietly watch her sip her coffee, her sharp, calculating eyes scanning my digital rendering on the glowing monitor, memorizing unique geometric shapes and innovative concepts she had absolutely no right to look at. Then, she would pat my shoulder, offer a highly patronizing comment about how cute my little art project was coming along, and glide smoothly back upstairs to her world of endless applause and parental validation. I always poured her untouched coffee straight down the sink the moment she disappeared. I truly thought she was just being nosy. I thought she was simply trying to find new, creative ways to belittle my hard work by pretending to understand it. I was so deeply submerged in my own academic world, so laser-focused on proving myself through my quiet, relentless labor, that I completely failed to see the intricate trap being set right inside my own sanctuary. I severely underestimated the sheer, bottomless magnitude of her professional greed, and as I would soon learn the hard way, in this family, underestimating Harper is a very dangerous game. It started with a simple, incredibly stupid mistake on my part. I had completely run out of storage space on my primary external hard drive. In a moment of sheer exhaustion at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, I plugged my laptop directly into our massive family server network just to temporarily back up my current project files. I only left the connection open for exactly 48 hours. When I went back down to my workspace to securely transfer my master folder, the one explicitly titled Aerostructure Ecological Complex, the primary subfolder containing all of my core technical blueprints was completely empty. It was not corrupted. It was not accidentally dragged into another directory. It was meticulously deleted from the source, but only after being fully copied. My heart slammed violently against my ribs. I immediately pulled up the network access logs. Someone had routed into my specific IP address from the upstairs home office exactly 24 hours earlier. That was Harper's home office. I desperately told myself I was just being overly paranoid. I spent 7 agonizing, sleepless days trying to recreate the missing data from my physical rough drafts, convincing myself it was a bizarre technical glitch. Then came Sunday morning. I walked upstairs into the brightly lit kitchen to grab a glass of cold water and froze dead in my tracks. Sitting perfectly centered on the sleek marble island was the absolute newest issue of the Seattle Architectural Digest. And there was my sister. Harper was beaming radiantly on the glossy front cover, wearing a fiercely tailored ruby red suit, standing victoriously in front of a massive digital rendering. The headline screamed in bold, aggressive letters, "Vanguard Horizons secures $60 million eco contract. Harper Austin's visionary triumph." I grabbed the heavy magazine, my hands physically shaking so hard the pages rattled. The structural rendering behind her was not just vaguely similar to my work, it was my exact, precise aerostructure design. She had cowardly slapped some cheap, trendy glass balconies on the front facade and completely changed the exterior color palette from a natural slate gray to a flashy brushed bronze. But the complex skeletal geometry, the highly unique curvature of the wind-channeling roof, the entire biomimicry framework that I had bled over for months, it was all undeniably mine. She had literally stolen the beating soul of my academic project and shamelessly rebranded it as her own brilliant, professional masterpiece. The heavy oak front door clicked open loudly. Harper strolled into the house from her expensive morning Pilates class, closely flanked by my mother and father, who were already loudly gushing about the magnificent article. I slammed the thick magazine down hard on the granite counter, The loud, sharp smack echoed violently through the kitchen, instantly killing their joyful laughter. "What exactly is this?" I demanded, my voice dropping dangerously low, trembling with a rage I could barely contain. Harper barely blinked. She calmly picked up a green apple from the fruit bowl, polished it slowly on her expensive yoga pants, and smiled a chillingly hollow, practiced smile. "It is my brilliant new project, Blakely, the exact one that just secured Vanguard a massive multi-million-dollar city contract. You really should try to sound a little happy for me." I pointed a violently shaking finger at the glossy page. "That is my aerostructure. You went into the family server and you completely stripped my files. You blatantly stole my exact schematics." My father stepped forward immediately, his face instantly hardening into a thick mask of pure, unadulterated defense. "You need to watch your tone right now, young lady," he barked loudly. "Harper did not steal a single thing. She saw your little basement sketches and she felt inspired. That is exactly how the real industry works. Raw ideas are shared and improved upon." I felt the blood roaring in my ears. Inspired Arthur. She copied the exact structural load distributions I spent 12 grueling months calculating those specific wind resistance ratios. My mother quickly rushed to Harper's side, placing a fiercely protective hand on her golden child's shoulder. "Blakely, please stop being so incredibly dramatic." Eleanor sighed heavily, waving her hand dismissively as if she were swatting away a pesky, annoying insect. "You are just a college student. You could never actually build a $60 million complex in the real world. Harper took your raw, messy, amateur concepts and refined them into something genuinely marketable. You should feel incredibly honored. You should be absolutely bursting with pride that you were able to help your successful sister climb the corporate ladder." Honored. They actually wanted me to feel honored for being robbed completely blind in my own home. I opened my mouth to scream, to literally tear the magazine to shreds right in front of them, but my father abruptly cut me off. He leaned heavily against the kitchen island, his eyes turning ice cold and deeply calculating. "Listen to me very carefully," he warned, his voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper. "Harper is on the absolute verge of becoming a senior partner at Vanguard. This specific contract is the most important milestone of her entire career. If you decide to throw a childish tantrum and make a public scene about this so-called theft, you will deeply embarrass this entire family, and if you embarrass us, we will immediately pull our co-signer status from your private student loans." The kitchen went instantly, terrifyingly silent. He was talking about $55,000 in pending tuition for my final year. Without their legal signatures, my funding would be instantly revoked by the bank. I would be kicked out of the university by the end of the month. My degree, my painstaking research, my entire future, completely obliterated in one swift move. They were cold-heartedly holding my entire life hostage just to protect her massive lie. I looked over at Harper. She was casually taking a loud bite of her apple, looking supremely victorious and utterly untouchable. I realized right then, with absolute, terrifying clarity, that I was completely and utterly on my own. I walked back down the wooden stairs to my basement sanctuary. My parents fully expected me to cry, to break things, or to pack my bags in a loud fit of defeated rebellion. But tears are a useless waste of hydration, and blind anger is a highly inefficient use of energy. Instead, a strange, absolute calmness washed over my entire body. I sat down heavily in my drafting chair and opened my master design directory. I needed to see exactly what Harper had successfully stolen. She had copied the primary subfolder, the one containing the exterior rendering and the foundational ground layouts. Let us call that Phase 1. It was visually stunning. It was exactly the kind of shiny, superficial bait that a greedy project manager would eagerly use to dazzle a room full of clueless city investors and local politicians. But my sister, for all her expensive tailored suits and slick corporate buzzwords, possesses zero actual engineering intuition. She did not bother to dig deeper into my hidden, encrypted directories because she fundamentally did not know what to look for. She did not realize that the sweeping, wind-channeling roof and the massive eco-glass facades created an incredibly dangerous aerodynamic lift. Without a highly specialized, central kinetic dampening system, a core framework designed specifically to absorb and distribute that immense wind shear. Her beautiful $60 million building would violently snap in half during the very first major Seattle winter storm. That internal structural core, the intricate skeleton that actually kept the massive building standing upright against gravity and weather, was Phase 2 of my project. And Phase 2 was safely locked away on my encrypted local drive. Harper had ruthlessly stolen a luxury sports car, but she had absolutely no engine to make it run. The sheer magnitude of her fatal error became my greatest weapon. I realized I did not need to fight my family for credit. I just needed to legally secure the trap they had blindly walked right into. Over the next 48 hours, I barely slept. I withdrew the last $2,000 from my personal savings account and paid a specialized online legal service to establish a blind, anonymous, limited liability company based out of Delaware. I named it Apex Structural Solutions. Through that newly minted corporate entity, I aggressively filed expedited intellectual property registrations and comprehensive design patents for the entire Phase 2 kinetic core and my proprietary self-healing concrete mixtures. Every single mathematical formula, every load-bearing calculation, every unique material composition was legally cemented entirely under my anonymous company name. If Vanguard Horizon Developments tried to construct that building, they would absolutely have to steal my patented core to prevent a catastrophic collapse. And the exact moment they poured that concrete, they would be committing massive corporate fraud and criminal copyright infringement. But a weapon is highly useless if you are still standing inside the blast radius when it detonates. I needed an immediate, ironclad exit strategy. The United States was no longer my home. I spent my quiet nights meticulously compiling my genuine portfolio, including the fully integrated Phase 1 and Phase 2 designs, and submitted a desperate, highly detailed application to the Royal Danish Academy in Copenhagen. They offered a globally renowned architectural residency program, fully funded, accepting only a fraction of 1% of global applicants. Denmark is exactly 9 hours ahead of Seattle. It is entirely out of my parents' toxic sphere of influence. It was the perfect sanctuary. 3 long weeks passed. The glamorous, victorious glow in the house upstairs began to flicker and dim. I noticed Harper coming home much later than usual. She stopped wearing her triumphant, mocking smiles at the dinner table. Her loud, confident phone calls pacing the hardwood floors turned into hushed, frantic whispers behind a heavily locked bedroom door. It did not take a genius to figure out what was happening at the Vanguard corporate office. The senior engineering team had finally run their advanced computer simulations on her stolen blueprints. The structural integrity software must have flashed bright red across their screens. They had recognized the catastrophic flaw. They had demanded the missing load-bearing calculations from their star project manager, and Harper, utterly clueless about the actual physics of the structure, had absolutely nothing to give them. On a cold, rainy Thursday evening, the basement door creaked open. Harper descended the wooden stairs, not with her usual arrogant strut, but with slow, hesitant steps. She carried a small plate of warm chocolate chip cookies. It was a pathetic, highly transparent attempt at sisterly affection. "Hey, Blakely," she said softly, placing the plate gently on the edge of my desk. Her voice was incredibly tight, laced with a barely concealed desperation. "You are always working so hard down here in the dark. I just wanted to see how you were doing." I slowly took off my reading glasses and offered her a warm, perfectly manufactured smile. "I am doing great, Harper, just trying to finish up my final semester." She nervously picked at her immaculate fingernails, her eyes darting away from mine. "Listen, the engineering team at Vanguard is being completely unreasonable lately. They are asking for some obscure internal stress metrics for the aerostructure project. They want the core framework details. I know you had some rough sketches for the interior supports before we, collaborated on the design. I was wondering if you could just pass those preliminary notes over to me, just to help me shut them up and move the project forward." There it was, the almighty family star, reduced to begging the lowly basement dweller for a professional lifeline. The sheer audacity of her framing her blatant theft as a collaboration almost made me laugh out loud, but I maintained my pleasant, highly naive expression. "Oh, of course," I replied eagerly, playing the role of the beaten, submissive sister who had finally accepted her designated place in the family hierarchy. "I totally understand how difficult those city engineers can be. They are so pedantic. I will compile the interior load data for you right away." For the next 14 days, I played a masterful game of delay and psychological deceit. I fed her absolute garbage. I drafted dozens of highly complex, incredibly dense architectural blueprints that looked extremely impressive to an untrained eye, but were mathematically useless. I gave her endless spreadsheets of fabricated stress tests and dummy variables. I intentionally used outdated drafting software to export the files, knowing her engineers would waste precious hours just trying to convert the formats. Every single time she nervously asked for the final core schematic, I told her I was running one more rigorous software diagnostic to ensure she looked absolutely perfect in front of her demanding bosses. I kept her dangling on a very thin string, feeding her false hope while her internal corporate deadlines rapidly approached. I watched the dark circles grow prominent under her eyes at the breakfast table. I was not just stalling to torture her, I was diligently watching my email inbox every single morning, waiting for a very specific notification from Europe. I needed the official, physical confirmation before I dropped the heavy hammer. I needed to know my future was entirely secured before I utterly dismantled hers. The heavy, suffocating climax of our family's grand illusion finally arrived on a Friday evening. The email I had been desperately waiting for had pinged into my inbox that very morning. The Royal Danish Academy had officially accepted my residency. My flight was booked for the following night. I was fully armed, completely packed in secret, and entirely ready to vanish. But my family had one final, utterly repulsive performance left to stage. Arthur and Eleanor decided to throw an incredibly lavish, catered dinner party. They invited over 40 guests, ranging from local city council members to Vanguard corporate executives. They were prematurely celebrating the impending city council vote to approve the groundbreaking permits for Harper's stolen project. The entire house smelled sickeningly of roasted prime rib, expensive floral arrangements, and unearned arrogance. I was quietly sipping a glass of sparkling water in the corner of the crowded dining room, watching my sister work the room. Harper was practically glowing, wearing a shimmering silver dress, laughing too loudly, and aggressively accepting congratulations for my hard work. Right before the main dessert course was scheduled to be served, my mother suddenly appeared at my side. Her fingers dug sharply into my upper arm, her grip entirely devoid of any maternal warmth. She leaned in close, her voice a tight, demanding whisper. She told me my father needed to speak with me immediately in the formal front living room. I followed her away from the noisy clatter of crystal glasses and into the quiet, dimly lit space. The heavy mahogany doors clicked firmly shut behind us, instantly cutting off the sounds of the party. My father was standing perfectly rigid next to the fireplace. Harper was already sitting on the velvet sofa, her posture stiff, clutching a crystal glass of expensive red wine. The atmosphere in the room was instantly suffocating, thick with a deeply predatory tension. Sitting perfectly centered on the low-glass coffee table was a thick stack of legal documents. My father pointed a stern finger at the papers. "Sit down, Blakely," he commanded, using the exact same tone he used when firing subordinate employees at his logistics firm. I slowly took a seat on the armchair opposite Harper. I looked down at the top page. The bold black letters at the top clearly read, "Full relinquishment of intellectual property and comprehensive non-disclosure agreement." It was a legally binding gag order. It explicitly stated that I surrendered any and all claims to the aerostructure designs, past, present, and future, transferring absolute ownership directly to Harper Austin. "Your sister's project is moving into the final approval stages by Monday morning," my father stated flatly, pacing slowly across the thick Persian rug. "Vanguard corporate lawyers are doing their final diligence sweeps. They need absolute, legally documented certainty that there will be no sudden, unexpected ownership disputes regarding the foundational designs. We need you to sign this right now, tonight, so Harper can continue her incredible work with complete peace of mind. I looked up at him, keeping my expression perfectly blank. And what exactly happens if I refuse to sign away my entire life's work? I asked, my voice deliberately soft, playing the role of the helpless victim. My mother let out a sharp, deeply impatient sigh. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest. Let us drop the dramatic victim act. Blakely, you are a 23-year-old college student. You have absolutely no money, no legal representation, and zero industry credibility. If you decide to be selfish and ruin this massive opportunity for your sister, we will take immediate action. The final tuition deadline for your spring semester is exactly 3 days away. The bill is $55,000. If you do not sign that paper right this second, your father and I will permanently withdraw our financial backing. You will be expelled from your university by Tuesday afternoon. You will have no degree, no home to live in, and absolutely no future. The choice is entirely yours. You can either be a supportive, loyal member of this family, or you can pack your bags and fend for yourself. It was the ultimate, undeniable proof of their moral bankruptcy. They were casually threatening to destroy my entire existence just to uphold a massive corporate lie. My hand slowly slipped into the deep pocket of my wool cardigan. My thumb found the smooth, familiar button on the side of my smartphone. With a firm, silent press, I activated the digital voice recording application. I made sure to leave my hand in my pocket for an extra 3 seconds to ensure the microphone was actively capturing the suffocating silence of the room. So, just to be entirely clear, I said slowly, making sure my voice projected perfectly toward my hidden pocket. You are officially threatening to cancel my final college tuition payments, forcing me to drop out of school, unless I legally surrender my original architectural designs to Harper so she can present them to Vanguard Horizon Developments as her own work. We are simply doing what is best for the overall success of this family, my father replied coldly, unknowingly providing the exact verbal confirmation I needed. Now stop wasting our time and sign the document. I let out a long, perfectly crafted sigh of absolute defeat. I reached out and picked up the heavy gold fountain pen resting next to the contract. I looked Harper directly in her eyes. She offered me a sickeningly sweet, victorious little smirk. I lowered my head, pressed the expensive nib to the thick paper, and signed my name. However, I did not write Blakely Austin. I fluidly and confidently forged the signature of a completely fictional, non-existent person named Bethany Ashton. I scribbled it just messy enough to look like a hasty, reluctant scrawl, but entirely legally invalid. My father immediately snatched the papers off the table, a look of profound relief washing over his stern face. He practically shoved them into his leather briefcase. The suffocating tension instantly vanished, replaced by a highly toxic, fabricated atmosphere of familial warmth. I knew you would finally make the mature, rational decision, my mother cooed, actually reaching out to briefly pat my knee. We all walked back out into the bright, noisy dining room. The guests were raising their glasses for a toast. Harper confidently stepped to the center of the room, raising her expensive wine glass high in the air. She looked directly at me, her eyes gleaming with absolute, unchallenged arrogance. I just want to take a quick moment to thank my wonderful, supportive family, Harper announced loudly, ensuring every single guest was listening, especially my little sister, Blakely. She has made a truly noble sacrifice for Blood tonight, helping me secure the foundational inspiration for this massive project. Here is to family, and here is to the future of the Seattle skyline. The entire room erupted into loud, enthusiastic applause. I raised my simple glass of sparkling water and offered my sister a bright, beaming smile. She thought she had just successfully bullied me into permanent silence. She had absolutely no idea that I was standing there with a legally invalid contract on her father's desk, a fully funded ticket to Europe in my bedroom, and a crystal-clear, high-definition digital audio recording of a felony extortion attempt burning a hole right inside my cardigan pocket. The trap was finally perfectly locked. At 3 o'clock in the morning, while the entire house was still heavy with the lingering smell of expensive roasted meat and exhausted arrogance, I quietly zipped up my single, black duffel bag. I had stripped my basement sanctuary entirely bare. Every physical sketch, every hard drive, every trace of my late-night labor was packed tightly away. I walked up the wooden stairs for the very last time, my soft-soled shoes making absolutely no sound against the polished hardwood floors. I moved like a ghost through the quiet, dark halls of a house that had never truly felt like a home. I stopped in the kitchen and stood over the sleek marble island, right on the exact center of the stone, the very same spot where Harper had proudly displayed her stolen magazine cover a month prior. I placed my silver house key right beneath that small piece of metal. I left a thick, heavily sealed manila envelope. By 4 o'clock, I was sitting silently in the back of a yellow taxi, heading straight to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. By 8 o'clock, I was sitting comfortably in a window seat, thousands of feet in the air, watching the thick gray morning clouds completely swallow the city below. I knew exactly how their glorious morning would violently unravel. Around 9 o'clock, my mother would eventually wander into the kitchen to brew her expensive espresso. She would spot the envelope, expecting perhaps a written apology or a pathetic plea for my tuition money. Instead, the very first page she pulled out was a crisp, high-quality color copy of a one-way boarding pass to Copenhagen, Denmark. Clipped directly behind it was the official, stamped acceptance letter from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts. I used a bright red marker to explicitly highlight the paragraph confirming my fully funded residency and my highly generous monthly living stipend. I left a short, neatly handwritten note securely stapled to the scholarship letter. It read very simply, "You can keep your cheap, manipulative tuition money. I never actually needed a single dime of it to build my future." But the absolute worst of the poison was buried deep in the second half of the stack. I left them a massive pile of certified legal documents. There were the official intellectual property registrations, the comprehensive design patents, and the corporate filing papers proving that I was the sole owner and chief executive of Apex Structural Solutions. I included a highly detailed, extremely blunt engineering summary addressed directly to my sister. It explained, using very simple, painfully basic terms that even she could understand, that the beautiful Phase 1 exterior she stole was highly aerodynamically unstable. I clearly stated that if Vanguard actually attempted to construct the building using only her stolen blueprints, the massive glass structure would suffer a catastrophic collapse within its first 6 months of facing Seattle wind currents. And if her engineers somehow figured out the missing mathematical equation and tried to secretly build the required central kinetic dampening system to save her project, they would be blatantly violating federal copyright laws, instantly triggering a multi-million-dollar corporate espionage lawsuit from my newly formed legal entity. However, I did not just leave that envelope for my parents to find and quietly destroy to protect their precious golden child. Exactly 1 hour before my plane took off from the runway, at precisely 7 o'clock in the morning, my automated email server executed a pre-scheduled, highly encrypted mass delivery. The recipients included the entire Vanguard Horizon Development's board of directors, their chief engineering officer, their head of legal compliance, and every single voting member of the Seattle City Planning Council. The subject line of the email was completely devoid of emotion, urgent notification of critical structural flaws and documented corporate fraud regarding the aerostructure complex. Attached to that explosive email was the entire undeniable digital trail of my original blueprints, the timestamps proving my creation dates, the patent registration numbers confirming my legal ownership, and a copy of the fake, legally invalid contract I had casually signed with a fake name. But the crown jewel of the attachment file was a crisp, perfectly audible copy of the digital voice recording from our lovely little living room chat the night before. I made sure the audio file was completely unedited. The board of directors heard my father explicitly threatening to destroy my entire education, They heard my mother aggressively demanding my silence. Most importantly, they heard my sister loudly celebrating the blatant theft of my intellectual property while arrogantly mocking my forced sacrifice. I read the explosive, catastrophic fallout on my laptop screen while sitting comfortably in a quiet airport lounge during my layover in London. The destruction was an absolute, glorious bloodbath. The Seattle Department of Construction immediately issued an emergency, hard stop order, indefinitely suspending the $60 million project pending a massive federal investigation into public safety hazards. Vanguard Horizon Developments moved with swift, ruthless corporate efficiency to distance themselves from the radioactive scandal. By exactly noon on Monday, a team of burly private security guards had publicly escorted Harper out of the towering glass lobby of the Vanguard corporate headquarters. They forced her to carry her personal belongings in a tiny, pathetic cardboard box in front of dozens of her stunned, whispering colleagues. She was instantly terminated without severance and formally charged by the company with gross professional misconduct, criminal misrepresentation, and corporate fraud. The local media, completely tipped off by the public suspension of the massive city contract, descended upon the Austin family like a pack of starving wolves. The exact same architectural magazines that had previously crowned my sister a visionary genius were now relentlessly dragging her name through the mud, branding her a delusional, dangerous fraud who almost caused a fatal, highly destructive structural disaster. My parents, who had spent their entire adult lives meticulously crafting a pristine, fake image of wealthy, untouchable superiority, suddenly found their angry, panicked faces plastered across local news websites and evening television broadcasts. They were thoroughly and completely exposed to all their wealthy suburban friends as highly manipulative extortionists who were entirely willing to sacrifice their youngest daughter to protect a massive, incredibly dangerous lie. Exactly 12 months have passed since that dark morning I left Seattle. Today, I am standing on a wide, cobblestone street in the heart of Copenhagen. The crisp, salty air coming off the Baltic Sea fills my lungs, and it tastes entirely like freedom. Right in front of me stands a newly completed community center, the very first fully realized ecological structure bearing my actual name as the lead designer. It features the self-healing concrete I spent countless nights perfecting in that damp basement, holding strong and beautiful in the bright Scandinavian sunlight. My smartphone occasionally vibrates in my deep coat pocket. The screen flashes with international numbers I have long since blocked, but they still find ways to leave desperate voicemails. I never listen to them. I already know exactly what Arthur and Eleanor are begging for. They are currently drowning in a massive sea of legal fees. Vanguard Horizon Developments did not just fire my sister. The corporation filed a brutal civil lawsuit against my parents for actively facilitating corporate fraud. To cover the astronomical settlement costs, their beautiful suburban house with the shiny hardwood floors and the dark, hidden basement was put up for public auction. They are rapidly losing everything they ever valued. As for Harper, her swift, catastrophic downfall was permanent. The National Architectural Board officially and permanently revoked her professional license. She can never legally design, manage, or even consult on a building project anywhere in the country ever again. I heard through old university contacts that the former golden child of the Austin family is now working a miserable, entry-level job as a customer service operator at a noisy local call center, spending her long days reading from a mandated script and apologizing to angry people over the phone. The bright sun that used to burn everything it touched has been entirely extinguished. People often assume I must carry a deep, burning hatred for my family. I honestly do not. Hatred is a heavy, exhausting burden, and I refuse to let them take up any more valuable space in my mind. I did not destroy them out of malice. I simply looked at the grand, towering structure of lies they had built their entire lives upon, and I quietly removed the central load-bearing pillar. Gravity simply did the rest of the work. Let my story be a very clear warning to you. Family is not a reason to let other people trample on your hard-earned achievements. Blood does not give anyone the right to steal your intellect or demand your silent sacrifice. Save yourself before they have the chance to sell you out one more time. Thank you so sincerely for spending your time listening to my story today. I would absolutely love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please share your city or country in the comments below. If you found my journey compelling, please consider helping our channel with a contribution of just $1. You can easily support us by scanning the QR code right here on your screen or by using the donation link provided in the video description or the comments section. Your kindness gives us the budget to pay our hardworking staff, helping them feed their families and allowing us to continue creating better and more powerful stories for you. Stay strong and always protect your foundation.